The Rocky Flats Cold War Museum Oral History Project. My name is Hannah Nordhaus and I am interviewing Bob Haines. The date is the 3rd, my watch is wrong, the 3rd of June 2004, and we are at Bob's house in Lakewood. And why don't we just start by talking about your background. You had started talking about where you grew up and your family background, so let's
All right.
start with that.
Yes, I'm Bob Haines. I live at 1355 Klein in Lakewood, Colorado. I'm a former employee of Dow Rocky Flats in the fire department. I worked at Dow from 1953 to 1958, and upon leaving Dow, I went to work for Rainbow Woolridge Corporation. And my childhood, I grew up, as I said, in Denver. However, I was born in Great Falls, Montana. My father was a watchmaker and engraver, and in his job, he traveled, and my parents moved to various cities. He was always trying to better himself, and so we seen quite a bit of the country. However, as they say, there's no place like Colorado, so they came back to Colorado, and I went to school at St. John's School in Denver and to St. Elizabeth's School, and I got, as I grew up, I went into high school at Cathedral High School in Denver, and during my time, jobs were pretty scarce, and so I had to get out and kind of help. I lost my father, I should backtrack and say, when I was 3 years old. So my mother supported my brother and myself. So times being as they were, why I had to quit school to help get a job and help support our family. After I quit high school in the 10th grade, and I worked various places, and I finally got a job out at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in the Post Exchange. And while I was working there, why I became acquainted with Colonel Glackman, who was head of the school, the dental school there. And we became very close friends, and he wanted me to go ahead and join the Army and work in the dental school. He said, I said, well, Colonel, I don't want to be a dentist. I said, I appreciate your kindness and your offer. And you know, the next thing, I got my greeting from Uncle Sam. And I went into the military. And I went in at Fort Logan, Colorado on February the 24th. And incidentally, this 24th is going to have a meaning here, which I can't figure how it happened, but it did. Anyhow, I went into the service on the 24th of February of 1942. I was sent to Camp Joseph T. Robinson, Little Rock, Arkansas, for my basic training. Well, we were supposed to have 8 weeks of basic training, but due to the situation at Pearl Harbor and the attack there, they needed troops, so they were pushing us through, trying to learn us what we would have to do to become soldiers. And so we kind of shipped out early, and they shipped us to Fort McDowell, California. And from there, I went to Honolulu to Schofield Barracks, and I was assigned to the 19th Infantry, the 24th Division. And I stayed there for 14 months on the island, and then we shipped out. We went to Australia, and we landed up in Queensland, up at a little port called Gladstone, and we were taken from Gladstone by motorcade to a town called Rockhampton, which is in Queensland. After we went there, they took us up to a little camp that was called Camp Cove, and we stayed there. And the reason that they took us down to Australia, they were preparing us for beach landings, what we were going to have to do later, and how to come off of the landing barges when we hit the beach. Now, we were in the infantry, and the infantry, as everyone knows, is foot soldiers. You walk, you don't ride. So we took this training, and from there we went up to Hollandia in New Guinea, and we encountered the Japanese forces there. The Japanese were holding the airfield at Hollandia, and fortunately to say, for our troops, the bombers and the ground troops never let the Japanese get one plane off of the ground. They never got a plane up in the air. Well, so much for the war. We went on from there to an island of Mindoro, and made a landing there. And after we had secured that island, they sent us back to Leyte. The island made an invasion to Leyte. Well, after we were on Leyte, they said, hey, we're losing the island of Mindoro. We need help up there, so we need more troops. So we went up and helped there and stayed there about 3 months, and then we came back and made this the invasion there. I mean, helped there on Leyte, and that was something I'm sure that most people were able to see on the film that's been produced for Memorial Day. They just had a film on the invasion of Leyte, and that would give you a very good idea of what we had to go through. It's a sight that I hope that no one ever has to see or go through. And we weren't the only troops. We were in the Pacific. Now bear in mind that there's a war going on in Europe at the same time. World War II was a big war. I mean, probably one of the biggest wars ever fought, because we had two fronts. We had the front in the Pacific, and we had the invasion over in Europe, and it is something, like I say, with the serviceman and the women. I think that everyone should, when they see a veteran, walk up and shake his hand. Now, in doing this has a special meaning. To a veteran, that's your way of saying thank you for a job well done. Now, I want to get away from the military. I've used up quite a bit of time talking about this. My experiences is without a doubt working for the fire department. I really enjoyed, but the only reason I really left there is I felt that there was no chance for my advancement in the fire department. We had a crew of 16 men. I have a list which I will furnish to you of all the fellas. I've almost memorized them. I could tell you every one of them, but that would take more time on here. I've already taken a lot of time. Chief Brock was our chief, a very good man. We had a very good crew. Now, back in those days, it was very strict and very military-like as far as security was concerned. We weren't allowed a television set. We weren't allowed to read anything except if it was pertaining to fire department procedures. We taught first aid, and we made fire inspections. We went in every building in Rocky Flats to make fire inspection. Now, the security and the form that you would encounter for being exposed to radiation or beryllium or such as that, I commend Dow Chemical and Rocky Flats for the fact that security and protection was terrific. I take my hat off to them, because I'll tell you, when we worked out there, I don't think there was anyone, including Mr. Langell, who was in charge at that time, that actually knew what they were making or what was going on. We were investigated, all employees were investigated from a security angle standpoint, and if you didn't pass your clearance, you didn't go to work out there. So everyone out there held a security clearance and was proud to do so, to have that security. Plus the fact is, everyone at that time that went out there was happy because wages was good, and it was a big concern. I mean, they employed, I don't recall how many actual employees was on the plant side at that time, but if you had a job out there, you had a good job, and you were willing to stay there. As I said, the only reason that I left there is I did better myself when I went to Ramo, but unfortunately they didn't last. The government contracts closed the plant out there. One of my most memorable experiences at Rocky Flats is the fire in 71 building. That was the first fire when they had the fire in the filter system out there.
That was 1957?
1957. And we got it out, let's put it that way. We didn't have any, have any losses, any casualties, fortunately. But I'll tell you, it's something I wouldn't want to go through again. I thought the war was bad, but I'll tell you, when you get down in a place like that, you're sure glad to see daylight when you come up topside. Well, fortunately, as I said, everybody got out of there without any real problems. One of the other memorable things out there was having worked there. Golly, I guess anyone that worked out there knows what the wind does as far as the weather's concerned. My gosh, they've clocked winds out there at 105 mile an hour when I was there, and since then I've heard that they're higher than that. But at one time we had 105 mile an hour wind out there, and it blew so hard we had to take our big heavy trucks, pumper trucks, fire trucks, and put them up against the roll-up doors. We had metal roll-up doors, and put them up against the doors to keep the door from coming in. And that was quite an experience. Other times out there, a lot of people don't know this, but gosh, you'd have to have your car painted. The gravel would take it, blow it off of the ground, and just sandblast the cars. And the wind was so strong. And that wasn't so bad, but the worst thing they had to contend with, the guard force had to help the women out to their cars in the parking lot when the wind was blowing like that. They formed a human chain, and also with a rope to guide the gals out to their cars. Well, 2 or 3 times, ladies had had their arms broke. The wind had blown them over. and it was quite an experience to go through one of those windstorms out there, and the snowstorms, the whiteouts you couldn't see. We used to have to, we traveled out Ralston Road from my house here, our carpool, and we kind of had to laugh because that overhead bridge, railroad bridge, on the east side as you come up where the east gate is now, you come up the hill and you can continue north. Well, you couldn't do that before. But anyhow, that railroad bridge, if it was snowing there, that's just like a weatherman. You could figure, oh boy, we're in for it. Well, many a time while I worked out there in the winter, cars would get stuck, stranded, and they had the guard force would have to come out and actually look for employees who were stranded that didn't make it in and get them back into the cars and get them back into the plant, because they had heavy vehicles, all-terrain or four-wheel drive vehicles then, that they could get them into the plant where just as a regular passenger car, you got stuck, you were there. And that's, like I say, those are some of the things you remember, and I well remember, like I say, everybody got along, and now maybe you have some questions you would like to ask, or...
Sure. Yeah. I guess I'd like to get from the war, from when you left the Army to how you ended up at Rocky Flats.
Okay, when I came out of the service, I, just like everyone else, I didn't really know what I wanted to get into, and I was living in the neighborhood, not in this house, but right in the neighborhood here, and I met a gentleman by the name of Bill Detter, who was charge of the armory out there at Rocky Flats. And Bill said, why don't you come out and put in an application? And he said, maybe you can get on out there, and he said, we can find something that you'd be interested in. So when you go out there, they have what they call the labor pool. You go into at that time they did, I don't know how it is now, but at that time you went into the labor pool, and then if a job opening came up that you thought you could handle or that you liked, you could apply for it. And that I did. I mean, they had an opening in the fire department, and I applied for it. And my gosh, I wasn't in the labor pool, I think a couple of days when this job opened up, so I was very grateful. I went to work, and I enjoyed, like I said, what I was doing.
You said that the pay was very good.
The pay was very good in comparison to what you'd find in regular jobs. I mean, if you were a skilled worker, of course, you made a little more. But not being skilled in any one profession, why, the fire department came along, and I had no experience in the fire department, but they taught me a lot, and I accomplished and was able to continue on my job, and appreciated it, like I said. But after I was there that time, I thought, well, now I'm getting older, and I want to advance. I'm kind of stalemated here because I can't go any higher, and so I'm going to go out to Ramo, which I did, and as I say, worked out there, and then in a couple of years, why that plant folded up. So
why was there no opportunity for advancement? There were just no...
No, you couldn't advance. I mean, there were fellows ahead of you who were staying, so the position like a lieutenant or squad leader, as we used to say in the Army, those guys were pretty well tied down to, they wanted to keep that job. So unless they quit, why, you didn't move up the ladder. And I had the foresight to see that, fortunately, and I thought, well, gosh, I could be here till I retired, 30 years, and maybe I should get into another field. And it really wasn't anything, I mean, I can't complain against the the company or anything. There was no ill feelings. I left on good terms with them. I just wanted something else.
So you just got in a little late compared to the people
Yes.
who were ahead of you on the ladder. So when Bill Detter told you, why don't you come apply to the labor pool at Rocky Flats, what did you know about Rocky Flats? Did you know anything?
I didn't know anything about it. I knew that it was a secret project. I knew that. I mean, that I really didn't know anything about what they were making or anything like that. Frankly, it was for betterment for job. I mean, if I could get it and make more money than I was making, why, that's why I went. And fortunately, I was able to get on.
And when did you figure out what they did there?
Pardon?
When did you find out what they made there?
I never did find out what they made there, and I don't think anybody else did. I think security was very good, very tight. I admire them for that. I mean, you could see the stuff moving in and out of the plant, but you didn't know what it was. I mean, you didn't question what it was. You had no reason to question. I mean, you had your job to do and you did your job. I mean, and that wasn't only the fire department. I mean, I think that was everybody that worked there. Sure, somebody at the top, things were made there that went out of the plant someplace else. So you didn't have a finished product. You didn't have a finished product. You had part of a product, but you didn't have a finished product.
So did you know that, or have a suspicion at least, that it had something to do with atomic weapons?
No, no. I never knew. I shouldn't say that we didn't know. We knew that it was part of something for the War Department. We didn't know what it was.
When did you, so obviously you now know what it was.
Oh, I know what it is now, yeah. Security is loosened.
Yeah, and when did you figure that out? That after you left Rocky Flats?
Oh, yes.
Huh.
When I left, I still didn't know. And I don't think a lot of people, even till later on, really knew what was going on out there. I think the government and the plant and all, I think it was run real good. I mean, it was real tight. I mean, nobody knew. I mean, a lot of people questioned, well, what are they doing? Everybody wanted, what do they make out there? What are they doing? How can I tell you if I don't know?
Were you curious?
Oh yeah, you're curious, sure, sure. You'd like to know, but nobody could tell you because you didn't talk about it. Like I say, you did your job and you didn't question. You had no reason to question.
Was that strange in any way? I don't know. You didn't mention when you were married and if you had family at that point.
Yes, when I was married at the time, we had 2 children, and unfortunately we lost both of them. But we were growing up, and we moved into this house, present house we're in right now. We've been here 53 years in the same house, and raised our children, went to school here in Lakewood and graduated from Lakewood High School. And like I said, unfortunately, we've lost both of them in accidents. Well, our son went into the service in the Navy and came home and went in the construction business, and he was killed up at Conifer in a construction accident. And our daughter was married and worked for the Lakewood Police Department as a dispatcher, and married one of the Lakewood agents over there. And they raised 2 children, and when she became ill, and they couldn't find out what was the matter with her. And one day she was over at the house here, and I said, "How do you feel?" She said, "I feel good." Well, 7:30 that night, they called us that she was in St. Anthony's in emergency to get right down there, and we met her husband. We got down there, and she passed away. and the doctors said it was what they call Budd-Seri syndrome, which is a liver ailment. But she had no previous knowledge of this till it just hit her and took her. So that, it was kind of hard losing your children, as they say. They're supposed to take care of you, and we've outlived both of them, and it's something I hope no one has to go through.
You have grandchildren. Is that a grandson over there?
That's a grandson. And if you'll notice, he's a fireman. He's on the fire. He's the youngest fireman on the Fort Collins Fire Department.
Oh, great! So he took after his grandpa, huh?
Yes.
Fire department.
Yes, his father was a policeman, and he decided to be a fireman. He just graduated this year, incidentally, from Fort Collins University.
From CSU.
Yeah, from CSU. And like I say, he just came home. He told me a very interesting experience. They were back in New York, and the fire department, they had a seminar back there he went to, and a training program. And he said, gee whiz, Grandpa, he said, guess what? He said, they took us up to this 70-story building, and we had to rappel off of the top of it down to the 60th floor and rescue this dummy, which was supposed to be a window washer had gotten stuck, and we had to go down and bring him up. And he said, I made the mistake of looking over the edge of the building. They said, don't look down, look up. But he said, guys, that was good training, but he said, I don't think I'll ever be able to use it in Fort Collins. I don't think they'll have any 70-story buildings.
I doubt it.
Well, any other questions?
Well, I guess that whole thing started because I was wondering what it was like to work in a job where you came home and couldn't tell your family what exactly it was that you did.
It really wasn't hard. I guess in the military it was the same way. When we came home from the service, you know, they didn't want you to talk about what went on in World War II, and we didn't want to talk about it. I mean, it was so horrible we didn't even want to think about it. And so I think that gave me a little advantage of the fact that don't talk about it. And that's why I say that I think the security was very good out there, and not only, you know, what could you talk about? You really couldn't talk about much because you didn't know.
Right.
I mean, you didn't know what they were making. I mean, you knew it was a component of a finished product, but you didn't know what the product was.
And so working in that high security environment, I imagine, also wasn't particularly different from being in the Army.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Were you a member of the union?
No, as a matter of fact, they didn't have a union at that time.
Ah. Do you think that would have opened up your opportunities in any way for advancement, or?
No, not really. You see what they did, and this took place after I left there. They went to a whole new, different operation, the fire department. We were on 8-hour shifts, and then when after I left there, they changed the whole fire department. We used to call it the fire barn. It was known as the fire barn. They continued. They built up above what would be where our ceiling was. They put another floor high above, and they put living quarters up there. They had televisions. They were able to cook, and we couldn't do that. We couldn't cook anything. We had a shower room there, but and there was no living quarters. So speaking to, when they changed it, why they actually lived there. They had nice quarters upstairs, and it was a completely different operation. I guess Chief Brock, as I understand it, he's passed away, but I don't know now whether this transpired while he was there or after he left, that they made the change in the department. But they are operating more like they do in the cities. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the living quarters on the premises.
Do they have a fire pole?
No.
So I wonder if you could tell me what a typical day at work would have been like.
Well, a typical day at work, I'll go back to the fact that having worked the 8-hour shifts, you bid for the shifts of what one, that you wanted, and they rotated the shifts around. Like you'd work so long days, and then the PM shift, and then but as far as the work day, you'd come to work. We would either teach first aid to the guard force, or we would make fire inspections. Now, making fire inspections, we went, as I said, into every building, and the security was real tight, and the fact of going in and changing, you had to change clothes at each building. You couldn't continue on. You put in the clothes that you had on, like from the fire department. When we went into a building, we would take off our clothes, put on coveralls and booties and caps and gloves, and then we could continue on with our inspection. We were seeing that all the fire extinguishers, everything was okay in operating order, and so that if they needed it before we got there, they had the fire extinguishers and things were operation signed off, and that none of the seals were broke on the extinguishers, so that if someone grabbed one, it wouldn't work. Our responsibility was to see that those things worked, and we did. And everything was good in the building. I mean, we'd see, all right, is there anything that we can see here that we think would betterment protection of the person working there? Mm-hmm. And if we found something, we would turn it in, and they would correct it. I mean, the company would correct it. Fortunately, we didn't have to do much of that because, as I said, I think it was very, very safe, as safe as they could make it. And the day, like I said, when we went to work, we either would read things on fire protection and such as that. Now, our chief, like I said, he was kind of a military man. He didn't believe in you watching television, and you were there. He wanted you alert and ready to go. If we had an alarm, he didn't want to be looking around the building, where's my guys? So we were taught, to be alert and to take care of things.
So it sounds like you were there from the very beginning as the buildings were being constructed?
Yes. Well, not from the beginning, no. I think it was 1952. Right. I went there in 53. Well, some of the buildings, yes, some of them were being built, yes. But most of the buildings were up. Now, what happened, I guess they still put up buildings after I left there. I mean, I don't know the numbers of them or anything else. I know there's a lot of storage buildings went up after I left. Mm-hmm. And as I say, at the time I left, there was no east gate. You couldn't come in from the east side. We just had the west gate. Mm-hmm.
were the buildings different from sort of industrial? Was it a different experience working those buildings than it would be working in a different kind of factory that wasn't so
Well,
specialized?
yes, in as much as, like I say, you didn't get in that building unless you were checked. I mean, and regular outside, you could come and go, you know, in a building, walk through the door. But you didn't do that out there. You didn't get in unless the guard let you in. So the security was real tight.
From the perspective of a fireman, was it a place that would be easy to fight fires, evacuate, isolate fire hazards?
Well, it was a little different. Most of the stuff that was out there, you couldn't put water on. You had to use dry chemical. So however, in the filter fires, we were able to use water. But I mean, in like magnesium and stuff like that, you can't put water on magnesium. It'll burn. It'll generate oxygen, and it'll flare up. You have a worse mess than so you have to use a powder to smother that out. So that's, like I say, most of it was dry. What they were working on, we were able to use dry powder, or in some cases probably CO2. But
did you know enough about the materials they were working on to? Did you know that it was magnesium or that it was plutonium?
Well, you would know by the area of the building what they were working on.
So they would say, if you're in building 71 and there's a fire in this part of the building,
You'd pretty well know what they were working with. Yes, you had to know what they were working with, but you didn't. Like I say, you didn't see. They had the glove boxes, they call them, and they worked with gloves and protection. So the piece they were actually working on would be in a glove box, so that if there was a fire, you could get to it and put it out, and they'd tell you what the material was they was working with, whether it was beryllium or whether it was uranium, or what it was that they were working with.
So you knew that you did know then that they were working with uranium and plutonium. And
Pardon?
you did know that they were working with uranium and plutonium then to the extent.
Oh yeah, we knew that. Yeah, we knew that what they were working with, but we also, like we said, we were told that you don't. If you knew what it was, you didn't tell. I mean, if I came to you, for instance, and said, well, guys, they're working with beryllium. Well, I didn't even know what beryllium was. I mean, I'd never seen it. So, and I don't think a lot of people knew what it was. As a matter of fact, I don't think till they discovered uranium and all here during the uranium deal, nobody really knew what it was. As far as a mineral or what.
Oh, so you knew it was uranium, but you didn't necessarily know that that's what went into nuclear weapons.
Yeah, right,
okay.
right.
The same with plutonium and everything else. Okay, that makes sense. Were there, prior to the 1957 fire, were there small fires that you put out in the glove boxes?
Well, no. Well, I never witnessed having to go into glove box. There may have been, but not on my shift. We had other fires, grass fires out there. Of course, we could use the regular water on them, you know. But just to get back to the security, to show you how tight the security was, when the National Fire Underwriters came to inspect our trucks and vehicles, they couldn't come into the plant. We had to take the trucks outside the gate to the ditch for them to draft water to see that they were operating as they should, because they weren't allowed. They didn't have a Q clearance. They couldn't come in the plant.
Were the trucks specially outfitted? Were they different than normal fire trucks?
No, no. Most of the trucks were trucks that were, the ones we had at the time I worked there were sent up to us from Sandia base. As they got new trucks, then we got their old ones. It's kind of like the government works. I mean, they pass them along, and they're good. There's nothing wrong with them. But if they're, maybe what they're doing down in Sandia is a little higher on priority than what we have, so they get the newer trucks. I don't say that, you know, I shouldn't say this happened, but this is my assumption of what it was. But can't complain. I mean, they had good trucks. We had 2 ambulances and two pumpers and a great big water tanker, a military, just a plain old water tanker like you used to see them watering the streets with. It was donated to them, I guess, from the government, from Army. It was the same type. It was an old Army tanker truck. But they used that. It came in handy. I mean, if we had to get out on a terrain where there was no water available there and we needed more water than what was in the pumper, we'd just draft it from the truck over to the pumper. And,
were the trucks mostly used then for the outdoor fires, and if it was a fire in one of the buildings?
Well, they were used both for outside and inside. Of course, if you have to use water, you know, in any great amount, why, you've got water inside the building too. I mean, they have what they call standpipes, and they have a sprinkler system and so forth. But any other question?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 57 fire. So you were you on duty when it happened?
When the
fire.
Oh yes, yes. We were we were down there right away.
Do you remember what were you doing when you got the call?
No, I really can't say. I mean, I wasn't out on building inspections. See, we all didn't go out doing these building inspections. There's always somebody at the station. There's men at the station, but there'd be maybe 2 guys on building inspection, and I was in the station and on the truck when we got the call to go down.
Go down there. And how did the fire start? Do you remember?
Well, they really don't know how it started. I mean, it got into the filter system, and the filter system caught fire, and it had to be extinguished. And you had to go down through like an escape hatch down a ladder into this filter bank, and you came out the same way. Well, it was pretty hot, I'll tell you that. And pretty smoky. You had to wear your mask. We had these, now they have what they call Scott packs, which is your oxygen. Then they had a MSA mask, they called it, the same type of a mask that the miners use. It has a canister under that filters the air through this canister. And that canister has a little timer on it. You can set the timer, and when it clicks, you have 5 minutes from the time it clicks to get out of there, get another filter in there. Now it's more, like I say, it's modernized, and these Scott packs work much better, but the old filters worked. I mean, they were good. They served the purpose.
So basically the filter bank was like a big tunnel up above the
There's a big box
area?
it was a box. You had to go down, and then this went up, like kind of like an elevator shaft.
Okay, and was it above? It was above the work area or below it?
Below.
Below, so it was in the sort of basement utility area. So you climbed down there.
Climbed down.
And how big was this box? Did you have to kneel down, or were you walking through it?
Oh no, you could walk around. Yeah, it's big. It was a big. I'd probably say maybe 15, 20 foot wide, and the same square. It's a big deal.
So you got down there, and could you see the flames when you got down there?
Oh yeah, you could see it, yeah. It was hot. You could even hear if someone told me that cement wouldn't burn, or would burn, I mean, I'd say they were crazy, but I tell you, it gets so hot, it doesn't really burn. It cracks and expands, and it throws pieces out just like shrapnel.
Wow.
When it gets so hot. And the bolts in the building, the bolts with the nuts on the end of the bolts were so hot they were popping off, flying all over the place.
Were you afraid the area was going to collapse?
Not really. I mean, you're scared. I wouldn't say I wasn't scared. Everybody's scared. But you're down there trying to do your job, get it out, get it under control.
So how many of you were down there?
4 at a time.
So you'd go down until you ran out of air and then come back up?
Yeah, you'd have to get out and come up. Somebody else would go down.
And what were you doing when you came down? So initially, were you initially not fighting it with water, and then you did fight it with water?
No, we put water on it as soon as we got down. From the outside, we run the line down.
Did you know what material was burning, or you just knew?
No, we knew. Well, we knew what it was. It was a filter bank. We knew what was in the filters. I mean, had to be put out.
And was it plutonium, or was it? I can't remember.
You don't know.
Yeah, you just knew that. But
No.
water was acceptable.
Water would have to be put on it, but we didn't know. Just
So you came down with hoses then? Is
Yeah,
that how you, and you just
And then
sprayed
and as you come out, like I say, as soon as you got topside, you had to be decontaminated.
What were you wearing?
White coveralls and our headgear, our helmets, and rubber boots.
Did you have the fireproof jackets that the firefighters wear?
Yeah, your bunker coats, they call them. Yeah.
Bunker coats. So that was on top of your white coveralls? So you come
And-
out,
And to come up, and that stuff had to be discarded and thrown away.
and then would you shower and then put on?
Oh yeah, you had to, when you come back, you had to shower right away.
And then
Put,
you put on another.
put on another,
coverall, go back down.
other clothes, right.
How long did it take you guys to put it out?
Oh golly, I don't remember really.
How many did you go down there multiple times to fight it, or
Pardon?
did you do multiple trips down yourself to?
I was down there twice. I mean, the original time and then the second time. Second time I come up, and they pretty well had it under control. They said the guys down there had it put out.
Were you nervous about any exposure to?
Yeah, I was for a while. Of course, there again, like I say, they were very good. You were checked for any contamination. They had the hospital there, you know, right on the base. They had an infirmary, I mean, and they checked you. Yeah, everybody was monitored and all.
And you were fine.
And fine, yeah.
Contaminants.
As a matter of fact, even after I left there, I got in their program where they checked the people, you know, for barium, and they sent me back to Philadelphia to be tested for see I had no beryllium. I felt real satisfied with the fact that the protection was good. I mean, there was no slipshod operation, I mean, that I could see. If it was, I didn't see it. I commend them very highly for. And as I noticed in your question there about what the attitude of the people were when the women came to work, well, there really weren't too many women working there when I was there. I mean, outside the office staff and the nurses in the infirmary. There were no, like later now, even on when they changed the guard setup And I think they went, the last time I was out there, they had this Wackenhut or whatever it is, guard service, and they had women guards. Well, there were no women guards at the time Dow had it. They were all men.
No women in the fire department?
No, none in the fire department. I think as I said, at that time, I think all that was there was the women who worked in offices. And they weren't in the buildings where there was any contamination.
Right. Well, I guess you were gone when all the protests and
yes,
all that
I was.
came about.
That all happened later.
What did you follow it? Did you have any thoughts?
No, I really thought it was in my speaking my own opinion. I thought it was a silly thing. I thought, why are they out there? I mean, I see no reason for it.
Did you ever feel that there was any reason why Rocky Flats wouldn't be safe?
Wouldn't be what?
Safe. Were you ever? I mean, obviously, you sound like you were very confident in all the safety measures they took
Oh,
when
yes.
you were there. Were you once you sort of knew what was going on there and knew more about radioactivity and beryllium and stuff like that? Did you have second thoughts about working in a place like that?
No. The only thing that crossed my mind is if you remember when John Gilbert Graham blew up the airplane. This was back. He was a fellow whose mother he was trying to inherit his mother's.
Did you get that? Okay, we're recording again. And you were
Okay.
talking about
I was talking about John Gilbert Graham blowing up the plane. The guard force, Ted Fisher, who was on the guard force, and I were watching, and we seen the plane explode out east over the city, and we knew that it was an airplane. We didn't know who it was or what happened. And then they said, well, he blew this plane up later. Well, then it got me to thinking, gee whiz, what if that plane had come over Rocky Flats and this happened? And I think at that time there was no air traffic over the flats itself. They didn't allow it. I mean, all the pilots and everything, civilian planes and all, had to stay clear of the plant. But I thought, like you say, when I seen that, I thought, well, gee, how horrible that would have been if it had happened right over the flats. But it didn't, and we were lucky.
Well, why did he explode the plane?
Pardon?
Why did he blow up the plane?
He took out a big insurance policy on his mother, on the insurance, $100,000, and he was going to figure he's set for the rest of his life. So apparently he wasn't a very good son. He set this bomb in the plane and blew it up.
Oh, he wasn't. Was he on it? He wasn't on.
No, he wasn't on it. No, he was on the ground. He sent her. She was going someplace, and he decided that to get rid of her and collect the insurance money, this is the way to do it.
My goodness. It was a passenger plane?
Pardon?
It was a passenger, a commercial
Passenger,
plane?
yeah, commercial plane.
I didn't. This must have been before my time.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about
Yeah, I can't remember just what year it was. It was between 54 and 58.
that. Oh, it was while you were at the flat.
While I was at the plant, yeah, that's like I say, we were watching. We actually seen the plane explode in the air, but we didn't know what. We knew it was a tragedy, but we didn't know anything about it
Right.
until this happened.
And so you weren't ever concerned about getting plutonium in your lungs?
No.
Or passing on to your kids or anything?
Well, to a certain extent, you were. I mean, but you tried. That's part of teaching. I mean, having been taught, you're aware. I mean, you don't go into an area until, you know, haphazardly.
Uh-huh.
You look and you protect yourself. And that's why I say I commend them for teaching that and enforcing it. And I think that saved a lot of people from absent-mindedly going someplace that they shouldn't be. Being aware, you were more cautious.
And do you think, with hindsight, they didn't know as much about radioactivity or about beryllium, for instance, as we do now? Were there any things that you saw then that in hindsight you wonder, you think, oh wow, we were lucky that nothing happened? Or?
No, not really. I mean, I think everything was handled real good. Now, as I say, what happened after I left there, I have no idea. I could not tell you, because the plant changed operations. Dow had it then, and I think Rockwell had it, and then I think there was another one that had it after that, and I don't know whether the last one, if that was the third or the fourth one that came in.
Okay, well, I guess just to wrap up, I'm wondering how you felt. Obviously, you didn't know at the time that it produced a key part of nuclear weapons, but how you feel now, knowing that you worked in a plant that produced nuclear weapons.
Well, I feel like this. I feel that we were very fortunate, that I was very fortunate that nothing happened real bad while I was there, not only for my benefit, but for the benefit of the public. I mean, had anything drastically happened, contamination had got out, and we would have been affected with the civilian people on the outside. I think that would have been a whole different story. And that's why I said I commend not only Dow, all the people that were operating the plant. The media said there were things that happened. I read that after I left there. Like, well, they didn't do this or they didn't do that, or but I don't think that's true. I think that if a lot of people, when they found out what went on out there and they knew, then they had a different opinion. I mean, some said, oh, well, my gosh, if we'd have known that, why, we would have moved away from here. We don't want to be by that plant. But it was fortunate, like I say, that it didn't happen while I was there, and it didn't happen after I left there, and the fact that it never happened. We were very...
Okay, we're recording
Okay,
again.
you asked, I think, one of the questions, if I had anything I'd like to contribute to the museum. I have my badge, which I'd like to give them, and I have my Rocky Flats driver's license.
Oh, great.
I don't know, maybe I did the wrong thing. I didn't turn them in. I kept them for souvenirs, but I don't think I violated any real security deal, and I'd like to have, like I say, I'd like to have them in the museum, because I don't think you'll find another one. If you did, it would be after the transfer to the...
You had talked about that you weren't afraid of what happened. I wonder what you, having fought in Japan, or in the South Pacific, I wonder what you thought about the atomic bomb then and then now.
Well, it was a horrible thing. I mean, a lot of people were killed by it, but we were at war, and when you're at war, you don't have a lot of options. I mean, what are you going to do? How are you going to stop this? We're having people killed. They're losing people. We're losing people every day, and we have to end it. We have to do something. Maybe it wasn't a humane thing to do, but it brought the stop. It brought the end of the war. And as I say, now I have a different feeling toward what went on, in as much as that at the time you're fighting, you're mad. You're there and you're mad at the people. As a matter of fact, when it's all basically boiled down, the fellows we were fighting on the ground there and in the air, the Japanese people, as individuals, we weren't mad at each other. I mean, but the war came about, and we were forced to do what we had to do. And I think the same way with the bomb. I mean, had they not used that bomb, and the war would have continued on and on, look how many more people would have been killed. So, and looking at it from that perspective, I think they did the right thing. I think if they had to do it again, I'd say yes, do it. End this. It's just like what we're going through now. The war we have now. It's got to come to an end. I don't think you can sit down at the table or that you can discuss it amongst the higher officials. It's got to stop. I mean, look at what's happening, day after day after day. People are being killed, and for what? I mean, why? I mean, it's a terrible thing, and like I say, I hope they don't have to use this method to end this war over there. I'm sure that, and hopefully pray to the Lord that it will happen without any destruction like we had to use then. And
So, did you feel working at, or after you learned what Rocky Flats produced, did you feel that it was a necessary thing to keep producing the nuclear weapons?
I think, I don't know about producing anymore. I don't know what they have in store. They may have the same thing. This is what, as the general public, we don't know about. I mean, that's part of the military. If we knew about it, other people would know about it. So we don't really know what they have. I mean, what the government has. And I feel, like I say, we shouldn't know. I mean, if we were to know, there